Welcome, welcome. It is Wednesday, December 20th. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Wisecrack Live. Henry here saying thanks and lick the stream while we wait for Michael. We'll be back with you in just a moment. I'm finding the Napoleon fans speaking up in chat interesting. The movie just didn't speak to me in an engaging way. I'll be curious to hear anyone else's takes as we go through the show. I actually did not get around to Boy in the Hair, and I had some stuff come up over this past week, so I've been out of the theater. Although I do have some hot questions for what we consider movies when we get to talking about movies during the show. And Curtis B, no, there is not going to be a stream next week. This is the last stream of 2023, so thank you again for joining us. Dude Abides, I did like Beau is Afraid, but I do think it's a messy kind of interesting, not so much a good kind of interesting.
Hey, what's up? It's Wisecrack Live. It's December 20th, 2023. So I want to say what's up to all my Christmas babies, all my Irish ladies, all my guys with scabies, not rabies, driving a Mercedes, everyone who's feeling grateful, everyone who's feeling great less, everyone who's feeling great empty, everyone who's feeling full of cheer, full of beer, full of queer, full of all that you hold dear, visiting family, having family visit you, visiting the family you wish that you had, having the family you wish you didn't, buying presents, stealing gifts, standing under the mistletoe, hoping for a consensual kiss, getting ready for the new year's with new fears, shedding new tears about society in a state of arrears. Well, hey, we're all here together For the last Wisecrack Live of the year, I'm Michael Burns here with producer Henry. Later, we'll be joined
What
by
up?
Raymond Creamer. Hopefully, everyone is doing well. You know, we want that for you all. We want you all to be doing well. Um, you know what? What a year. You know what a year we've had. Together. And we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna wrap it up now. Um, I forget, Henry. Can you remind me of this? And this is I feel embarrassed that I have to ask this question. Um, when did you start jumping in on the streams?
I want to say August of 2022, August or July.
Wow.
Yeah, we've
Wow.
been consistent, haven't we?
Wow. That's amazing. Amazing. It's been a really long time.
I've
Been a
enjoyed
really long time.
building this stream relationship with you, Michael. Yeah, it's been a
Wow.
great year.
Time really flies. Time flies. This year was weird because there was a big gap in the middle of it where I wasn't here for a bit. But that's so exciting.
Yeah, you
And so
became a
exciting.
father
Yeah.
this year.
I became a father to all of you. I'm not talking about my real child. I'm talking about all of you in the chat. You're my children.
Yeah, we
So
curated this audience. Are we married now? Damn it.
I think so. But yeah, Eddie's in the office stealing time. We love it. Mita, thank you for enjoying the poetry. Dennis as well. Uncivilized Games, thank you for acknowledging it. Glad that we're all here together. Julia, I do not write these intros out. I don't know. I think it's like gradually progressed over the past few episodes. Me just saying a lot of stuff during the intro. So we'll see if it stops soon. But thank you for being here, everyone. Nice to see you all, digitally speaking. Someone said next year's an election. I mean, we don't do politics, but that'll be a funny year. Speaking of not doing politics, it was fun talking to Marianne Williamson last week. That was weird. That was weird but fun. It was weird but fun. And then the Marianne Williamson official accounts, tweeted out some clips from the stream. So that's just weird, right? And in talking about the year we've had on this stream, the journey Henry and I have had together, if you would have told me a year ago that at some point Marianne Williamson would be posting clips from our stream, I would have said, what the fuck? And here we are. And here we are. But yeah, Christmas is always hard for me because I have to buy all of my 14 dads gifts. You know what that's like. It's pretty tough. Dominic, thank you. This is the last this beard will be seen on Wisecrack content because I'm going to shave it before tomorrow when we film our first videos of 2024. But I got some channel news for everyone. Like the stream if you're here. You probably expected to see a video on Monday, which would be normal because we normally put a video out. And wait, I don't want to fuck this up. Henry, you might know. You know the video that we haven't been able to release?
Is it the Streisand one?
Yes. Okay. Just making sure because I don't want to say the wrong one.
Yeah, I edited that one.
Yeah. So here's the deal, friends. We made a video about the Streisand effect and the Streisand effect in the context of people on TikTok posting about Bin Laden's letters to America and the chaos that caused. Made a video about it. YouTube said you can't put it out. It can't be monetized. You can't do this. This is bad. And for days we've been like, why? What did we do? It turns out there was a stupid fucking reference to the Tide Pod challenge in that video. We included a little clip of the Tide Pod challenge sort of thing. And here's the thing about YouTube, guys. They told us that that's why our video got flagged and demonetized. We then were like, oh, cool. We'll take that clip out. We will remove those 3 seconds of the 20-minute video and then we'll be fine. Right? And YouTube said, no, it is against their policy. I think this is crazy, guys. I'm pretty fucking pissed about it. YouTube said that once they say a video is ineligible for monetization, even if they say to you, oh, these 3 seconds are the bad ones, And you say, oh, cool, just take those 3 seconds out. They say no. And they literally told us if we were to take out that clip and re-upload it in an attempt to get remonetized, that could lead to our channel being terminated. It's a real thing that they said. So yeah, Jesus Louise says this. So like the stuff about 9/11 and Osama bin Laden, fine. But we showed a short clip of the Tide Pod challenge. And you know, the demonetization thing might not sound like a big deal. But it is, because for better or worse, to make money off of YouTube videos and to make enough money to get anywhere near making it worth to make the videos, we have to have monetization. You know, we have to be able to make some money off of it. And you know, that video, I'll be honest with you, doesn't have a sponsor on it. So we're going to be taking a major L on a video that a lot of people worked hard on. You know, we're going to put it out on Friday. So try to watch it if you can. It would mean a lot to us if you did, but it's a big L for us to take at the very end of the year. So there you go. Nick Kerr says, where's Jared? He's in the back. He'll be here in 2 seconds. But yeah, it sucks. Now, if you are a patron, you have seen that video. It's on our Patreon. I'm not saying that right now to be like, oh, go sign up for Patreon or whatever. But if you really want to see that video and you don't want to wait till Friday, you can sign up for our Patreon. We get all our videos and no ads. But it sucks. We are going to talk about movies today. So, you know, we're going to get there. But first, I'm just kind of ranting about that. Yeah, Mesa says the fucked up thing is that demonetized videos still get ads, but YouTube keeps the revenue. Yeah, it's not really good. Alex is here, been watching Wisecrack since 8-Bit Cinema, which is like the earliest days. Thank you for taking 2 seconds of your vacation to watch the stream. That really means a lot. What did you buy Skip Intro for Christmas? This actually relates to something we'll talk about later. I think I kind of did get Skip Intro, aka Jackson Mayer, a present. I think I did get them a present, and we'll talk about it in a second. But that's where we're at with the channel. It really bums us out, but you're still gonna get it. And then our final video of the year is going to come out next week, and that'll be a video on Henry Kissinger, but on how we talk about dead people, and in particular, how we talk about dead people who are like bad dead people. So that one will be fun. That's going to come out on December 29th. That'll be our last video of 2023. We'll be taking a week off and getting back after it in 2024. And I'll tell you what the first couple of videos are going to be out in 2024. Let's get into it. And you know, we're filming these 2 tomorrow. So if anyone has thoughts, you still have time to influence the content. We're doing a video on the notion that people say that comedians are modern philosophers, that they are our philosophers. Spoiler alert, I'm going to try to say that they're not. The other video is on business speak and how the language, like corporate language, has basically infected our lives, what it means that corporate speak is everywhere, and especially what it means when we sort of appropriate corporate language and speak in our personal lives. So there you go. I'm psyched for everyone who's here watching on their work time. It's our favorite thing for you to do. So we'll get through a few things. And of course, our buddy Raymond is going to be on the Talk Movies in a second. So let's just look at some comments from last week, a thing we like to do. I just had them open. See. Okay, so these are comments from our Squid Games video. I said Squid Games. Squid Game video on Squid Game, the reality show. Thank you for watching that, by the way. That's one we kind of made as a flyer. So thanks for watching it. This comment said, as soon as Mr. Beast uploaded his version of Squid Games, I knew a lot of people had grossly missed the point of the show. Now this is a hilarious example of society becoming a satire of itself. For those of you who don't know, Squid Game is a South Korean show that's a kind of pointed social satire critique that's looking at the way that capitalist society dehumanizes all of us, and being saddled with debt kind of fuels a sort of alienation and competition that makes life horrible. And Netflix's response to that was to make a reality show that did just that. So we talked about it. The next comment says, I think it's interesting that the original show, the audience was wealthy, while the reality show version, the audience is presumably the middle class. When the wealthy exploit us for their entertainment, it's clear. When we exploit those under us for comfort, there's a disconnect. And our small privilege is easy to watch human misery on screen and rejoice. I'm so glad it's not me. And even if it was me, I'd be the one who wins. It's a reinforcement of American exceptionalism and evident that more deconstruction of colonialism must be performed. That got intense at the end, but there you go. But yeah, it is weird. You know, some of it is that like crabs in a bucket logic. Um, but it's weird the way in which we will consume content that in ways is exploiting people that are basically like us or slightly below us and things of that nature. Um, let's see. So I think are the last two comments are from the stream, right? Yeah. Um, so this one says, great conversation. I know there was some protesting about all the civility and appreciation, but I love that. First of all, I'm not sure if putting people on the defensive actually makes them more truthful. Military interrogation expert Greg Hartley says not. Second of all, Marianne had enough interviews coming after about the same stuff. It was great to hear some new questions. Yeah, so some people after we talked to Marianne Williamson last week were like, why didn't you go in? Why didn't you go hard? Why didn't you take her down? And I was just like, this isn't a political show. This isn't the No Spin Zone. My name is not Rachel Maddow, Carlson, Tucker, O'Reilly, Hayes, Reed, or anything like that. Just a guy sitting on YouTube trying to make people love me. But I think for us, it was just interesting to talk to someone in that cultural position. Interesting to talk to someone who has run for president a couple times, has been pretty adjacent to certain levels of power and influence, and just to kind of hear how someone in that position thinks about some of the stuff we talk about a lot. So I was interested in hearing what you thought about education and spirituality and politics and a lot of stuff. So it was kind of like a fun thing to do. This doesn't mean we're turning what we do into like a political show or anything like that. This next comment, that I just want to be clear, Henry pulled this comment.
Yep.
I did not pull this comment. But our friend said Yasa 5746 goes, good God, forgive the thirst, y'all, but the DILF energy, I can't. I think DILF means dad I'd like to be friends with. And I guess that's the energy I give off, is the energy of a friendly dad. Now we all know what it means. We all know that it means we all know that it means dad I'd like to fuck. And I'll say it. I'll say it. It's nice. It's nice. Why not? Don't we all want to be desirable to some extent, especially as we get older and become dads with gray beards. We want to have some level of that. So there you go. Those are some comments from this week. No, yeah, Chris Maverick said, I find it amazing that people are afraid of you platforming her. Yeah, guys, like, let's be real. There's like 300 people watching this stream right now, and you guys and people were worried that we were giving Marianne Williamson too big of a platform. Guys, what are we doing? What are we doing? It's fine, okay? It's fine. Dude abides, you can't call me Uncle Mikey, even though Dude abides, I think we're the same age, and you might be slightly older. Speaking of age, I'll be honest, it's my birthday Friday. It's a weird time of year to have a birthday. Shout it out in the chat if any of you are also Christmas time babies. But it's just weird because there's so much enthusiasm for the holidays this time of year. It's a weird time to have a birthday. I did. Someone said, you have a wife, get over it. I can tell you that person is not married. There's no universe that a married person would leave that comment. Now, Zach MNR19, it's fine that you're not married. Maybe you don't want to be married. Maybe you're young. Maybe you're 19. I don't know. But I promise you that is not a comment that a person who is married would leave. Oh, someone's checking in from Philly. Love Philly. Love Philly. Let's see. John C says, Michael, I get what you're saying about the nature of your show, but I do think that any of us who get a platform, especially in the era of social media, are journalists. Yeah, I mean, and I guess I would just say that, like, we got some other birthday folks. 12 to, oh yeah, lots of our birthdays, and thank you so much. Christopher Fierce just turned 40. Dude, congrats. That's amazing. And happy birthday, Krista. And happy birthday, Jesus. Okay. Callie, so glad that you're here. But yeah, I think that, like, I don't think the responsibility is that we're like journalists because we do this. Um, I do think there's a responsibility. So this sounds weird. If Marianne would have said some stuff that I really thought was like bullshit, I would have said something because, like, I don't care. What's the worst case scenario? Um, Zach says 19 is just a number. That's fair. I assume because that if you made your username your age, you'd have to change it every year, which would be really annoying. I'm not going to tell everyone how old I'm turning on Friday, but I won't be 40 yet, guys. My age is still going to start with a 3. But yeah, I don't know. I think that, like, my responsibility, if I had any when talking to Marianne Williamson, was to, like, get her to try to be honest. My main goal was to try to get her to be a human and reflect on things that weren't just her campaign talking points. But there you go. We probably aren't going to have any other 2024 presidential candidates on. But there you go. I'll say this. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but I will. I mean, I like her politics better than the president of the United States politics. I'll say that. Yes, it's 39, guys. It's a 39. So one more thing, we're gonna get Raymond Creamer on the show in just a sec. He's waiting with us right now. We love him very much. You probably know Raymond. He's a filmmaker, writer, host of Cinemethology, former host of Show Me the Meeting, and tall boy. But we'll get him on in a second. So one thing I wanted to bring up before we really got cooking is a fun thing happened. I'm going to talk about the sight and sound thing. If we wanted to pull it up, you could. Henry, do you have the link for that? No, I can send it to you. Okay, cool. I'll drop the link just in case that's helpful. But a fun thing happened. So I'm sure many of you know about Sight and Sound. It's the magazine from the British Film Institute. They do a lot of really good, like, best films of the year list. They do a best 100 films of all time list. It's like a good film nerd publication. And somehow I got asked to contribute to the best video essays of 2023 list. And it was intimidating because it's a lot of academics and filmmakers and people who I think are a lot fancier than me get to contribute to this. And the main reason I want to tell you about this is because the introductory essay is awesome. And in looking through this, I've learned about so many cool things. Most people's recommendations were way deeper than mine. But I got to recommend some stuff. So I'm just going to quickly tell you about the stuff that I put in here. I'm listed under Michael O'Neill Burns. I thought they left me off initially because alphabetically, I didn't see the B, but then I remember that British people, if you have a middle name you use, they use that as your it's a whole thing. But I'm under Michael O'Neill Burns. And I'll tell you the ones I picked. I picked one from Tom Nicholas, who put out a really fucking good video over the weekend. But I picked his video, Griftonomics, Why Scams Are Everywhere Now. It's one of my favorite videos of the year. It does a really good job of getting at the logic of grifting and how deep down it goes. And something I noted in my little write-up of Tom's video is I like how he's able to talk about shitty aspects of the world without having a sort of, like, doom and gloom, nihilist, anti-capitalist energy that's just a bummer. So, that's why I recommended that one. Eddie gets it, MOB, for sure. Hey, Emo Dragon, thank you so much that you found us. I'm glad that we found each other. The next video I put on there was What Red Pill Philosophy Gets Wrong by Then and Now, Then channel I love very, very much. Lewis, who runs that, really smart guy. I guess I went very British with these first two. And if you guys haven't seen this video, he gets into the philosophy behind red pill logic and sort of like the manosphere. And I think what he does, which is really interesting, is the tone of the video isn't check out these fascist idiots. It's let's look at the logic underlying these movements, and let's take that logic seriously in a way that doesn't just dismiss people because they maybe have ideological commitments that differ from our own. And I think that's really important. And another rare thing, I think it's really easy to be angry and shitty and stuff like that. And finally, I recommended The Parasite Class is Killing Us by Alice Capel. I did go full Europe. With Alice, we left the British Isles and went to France. Alice, who's been on the show before, hopefully will be back in 2024. This video got into vampire capitalism. It used Bong Joon-ho's Parasite as a way to talk about the parasitism inherent in so much of digital capitalism, and in particular, the tendency on YouTube of these self-styled business gurus to give us all their like money hacks that are really just exploitative garbage. The other thing, I want to find it. Let me see if I can. So, the other thing I got to put in the list, they have a thing at the end that's like the best up and coming YouTube creators. I put Alice there because Alice is newer, and I put Jackson, our buddy, Skip Intro on there. So, I not just to be nice, but I think that Jackson makes really great videos. I think his channel is great. I in particular brought up his propaganda series. And I'm gonna read a line from that one, which I think is it gets at why I like Skip Intro and Jackson's channel so much. I said, maybe most impressively, Jackson does all this while being relatable and curious, never making the viewer feel judged, but instead inviting us to dig deeper alongside him. And for me, at least, that's, oh my God, I just went back to the chat, guys, and the first thing I saw was, geez Louise, I didn't jerk off for a month, and I started seeing entities. That might have just been my schizophrenia, though. I'm talking about Jackson. I'm trying to discuss this list, and then it comes back, and I see that, and there's no way I can't immediately acknowledge I didn't jerk off for a month, and I started seeing entities. I want to make a shirt for Wisecrack Live that just says I didn't jerk off for a month, and I started seeing entities. If one of our designer friends could make that. But hey, I'll just say then, if you have it in you and you want to check it out, you can look at the the full list. There's a lot of good stuff on there. If you like video essays, I think you guys will find lots of cool stuff on here. It was truly, I'm gonna sound like I'm sucking butt right now. It was truly an honor to get to contribute to that list. So there you go. Skip Intro's best discovery of 2023 for Dude Abides. Okay, so there's some stuff I'll maybe talk about later. I just want to get to it with our buddy Raymond and talking about movies. We're going to talk about our best movies of 2023. Henry and I are going to jump in some as well. And I'm going to give the caveat before we get into this, guys. The kid ruined my movie watching year a bit. So there's some movies that I imagine would maybe be on my list that are not here. So Raymond, you're welcome to pop on whenever you're ready and unmute and unfreeze and undo all the things. There he is. There he is.
Hey.
Everyone,
hey,
just
everybody.
clap wherever you are in the world.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays to you, Michael, and you,
wherever
Henry,
you are in the world.
All the Wisecrack super delegates out there, a happy holidays to you as well.
Wow. And it was hard to get Raymond on, everyone, because he was really pissed off that we had a presidential candidate on, because for him, it's all about staying out of politics fully. So thank you for coming on in spite of the fact that Marianne Williams is your enemy.
So you did get all of my emails and texts saying
I did. At a certain point,
this is very unfair to the current president. How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you tilt the nomination toward Marianne? I mean, it can't be underestimated, the power of your platform and the responsibility you have to wield it.
No, and I do think as one of the leading figures in global media, I sometimes don't take that responsibility seriously enough. But when literally hundreds of people tune in and out of incoherent ramblings I have once a week, the sort of influence I wield is large.
Well, it's the principle, really, because I think something that I feel very strongly about is, regardless of what you think of the current president, you do have to respect the office.
You have to.
it's really, really important that you don't run anyone against him,
You can't. It's
or
not a
her.
yeah.
Who knows? And I agree, and that's for both sides. So frankly, I thought it
Oh,
was insulting
yeah.
for Biden to run in 2020.
Yeah.
Um, but it is what it is. This is where we are now, and
Yeah.
you know,
Wow. Raymond getting a lot of love in the chat. Dude Abide says, "Hello, Ray." I guess I feel like when it's "hello," it's like British, so it's more like "hello,
I know
Ray
Dude
Ray."
Abides. I remember Dude Abides. A lot of these are some ghosts of Christmas past coming back
Yeah.
to haunt me here. I can't see the chat. I don't know if that's a thing that if I'm not
Oh,
supposed to
you
be
have
able
to
to see it, or
be on like YouTube to see. You have to be on the
okay,
stream
okay,
thing. I'll just tell
okay.
you what everyone says about you that's nice. I won't tell you anything anyone says that's mean. But I do imagine a lot of you in the chat know Raymond because you've been around. You've seen things. Raymond's been on this stream before. Raymond was a part of Culture Binge. Raymond was the host of Show Me the Meaning. Raymond currently hosts a movie podcast that I know. What's up, Honeyman 1917?
Currently, maybe recently host them.
Recent-
I don't. Yeah, it's been a while since we've uploaded an episode.
I've had some questions that I wasn't going to ask. And listen, it's hard. It's hard to keep up a content schedule, especially when
Yeah.
everyone involved in making that content has a lot going on in their own lives, lives around the world.
You know what's so
We
funny
understand.
is we have 3 episodes just banked up that I have not had time to edit and review and release. So
That's a lot of work.
it's not that we're abandoning the show. If you're a Cinemythology listener, thank you. Please stay the course. Don't give up on us now. But it is just one of those things, when kind of life gets in the way. I know certainly you've spoken to that experience on your end in the past year. How are things going with the kiddo, by the way? I don't mean to pry or put your personal affairs on blast.
You're not prying. For legal purposes, I do not have a child, but hypothetically, for the sake of the content we're making, it's great. I like her very much.
Yeah.
It's very fun. She's like a little over 5 months old now. Getting to an age where she's responding to stuff. She's laughing at stuff this morning, Put on.
Does she know any
like
tricks or anything yet?
She's really
can
good at
roll over, or...
farting. She can roll on her side. And she can squirm a little bit. She's learning how to sit up. She laughs at her own farts. So she will fart and then she pauses a second and then goes and gets really happy at her farts. So it makes me feel like we're related. I think she probably looks more like my wife. So I'm glad that, that she has a little bit of me in her, in that I too like to laugh at farts.
Well, you're also someone who you're capable of entertaining yourself.
Very
you
much so.
Need someone always looking in on you, so that bodes well for her future.
Yeah,
it seems she's already kicking herself into giggles there.
Oh, for sure, and she likes music, which is fun. She recently, if I put a acoustic guitar near her, she'll reach out and like touch the strings. That's pretty fun.
She'll slam it like August Rush. Does she like Bored Betty? Has she listened
She's not been to a show
any
yet.
jam music yet?
I think when we have a daytime outdoor show, she will be allowed to come wearing baby headphones.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
That's got to be exciting. I imagine you're really looking forward to being able to do that kind of stuff with her.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, it'll be good to get out in the world a bit. But a thing I'm genuinely looking forward to, and this isn't just a transitionary thing, I can't wait to watch movies with her one day.
Yeah, right.
I think about this, and actually the last thing I did before I was a father, the day that my wife went into labor, I went and saw the most recent Mission Impossible movie.
Okay.
So like the last thing I did kind of before becoming a father was that, and the first time that I like left the house after she was born was to go see Barbie. So kind of on both ends of having
feels
her.
like a landmark for you.
Yeah, and now it's one of those things where, and there's a movie that came out this year that is a movie that I saw before she was born that I already was like, oh my God, I can't wait to watch this with her one day.
Mm-hmm.
But before we really get cooking, I'm going to preface, and I said this before, guys. I have a list of movies in front of me right now. It's more than 5, less than 10, because I don't even think I saw enough movies to justify a full top 10. But I didn't get to see all the movies I wanted to see, and actually a lot of the movies I haven't seen yet, I'm going to try to cram in the next week. But it's been hard. Getting out to see movies has been tough. Hopefully it'll get a little easier. Luckily, the theater nearest my house just reopened, so that'll be helpful to some extent. I was able to see Napoleon there a couple weeks ago, a movie that is not on any list that I or any sane person should make.
I haven't seen it yet, but it feels like it kind of came and went. I haven't seen many people talking about it. Henry, what are you
Yeah.
laughing about? What do you think about Napoleon over there?
I was very underwhelmed by it. I found it kind of just a total mess. It was very at odds with itself.
Well, I would like to see you say that to Napoleon's face.
Wow. You have to look down, that short little bitch.
Oh, I was gonna say because he's in the ground, but okay.
Honeyman wants to know that I saw Bottoms, that I did. I think Bottoms was maybe like the second or third movie I saw when I was allowed to leave my baby at home, just abandoning her. Bottoms is not on my list, but I will say Bottoms was a funny movie. It was a comedy that was funny. I laughed out loud in the theater. I think the movie was ultimately kind of disappointing in where it took things, and it could have been more interesting, and it sort of brought up a premise, this like Fight Club thing that it dropped, but very funny. And if we didn't already know that like Ayo Edebiri and Rachel Sennett are two of the funniest younger actors in Hollywood, we now have to be pretty sure of that because they're both hilarious in that movie. So, but
yeah, I had a good time at Bottoms, but I think maybe if we dig into the list, we'll be able to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll say this: my list is I vaguely have ordered it. So is yours ranked, or did you just do top 10 overall?
Kind of, sorta. I mean, I think anytime you start getting into like what makes this movie better than another movie, it's just sort of it's sort of a fool's errand. But I have kind of an intuitive ranking, but it's not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say any one of them I feel very strongly about. Most years I'm like, my top 3, these are so great and nothing touches them and blah blah blah. And maybe I still kind of feel that way about some movies on my list, but this year, for different reasons, I wasn't able to see as many movies as I would have liked in theaters, and there's definitely still some boxes I'd like to check. This list could definitely shake up a year from now. I'm sure I would have a totally different top 10. But there were quite a few that I enjoyed, but kind of on the Bottoms note, I remember really like laughing a lot in theaters, but then the next day I couldn't really remember a lot of lines or bits that that stuck in my head or things like that. So I was kind of just sort of going off of my memory of like, I remember sitting and really enjoying that in theaters, and even if I didn't have a real strong attachment to the movies much later.
Yeah. Well, let's do this then. We'll pass the ball around a little bit, do a little more popcorn style. Maybe at the end, we can all say if we had to pick a favorite movie of the year. And I imagine what is going to happen invariably is that maybe Raymond will say a movie that I also have written down that Henry might have, and vice versa. So we can kind of just talk about things as they come up. But our guest gets to go first. So Raymond, what is one of your favorite 10 movies of 2023?
Well, I'll start at the back end of the list. We've already talked about Bottoms a little bit, but another movie that came out this year that I think would make a great double feature is something called Polite Society. I'm not sure if you've seen this one.
A movie I have not seen, but I'm excited to hear about it. I'm going to write it down right now.
Yeah, directed by Nida Mansour. It's a movie about a young woman who wants to become a stunt performer, and
yeah, I saw the trailers for this. Sorry.
No. If Bottoms is kind of taking its cues from Fight Club, Polite Society kind of takes a lot of cues from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, puts kind of a new spin on it. And it's just very fun. It, similar to Bottoms, takes place in a very kind of elevated version of high school. There's a lot of cinematic flourishes, and it goes to some extremely absurdist areas near the end of it. But yeah, it's just, I don't know that either Bottoms or Polite Society would be a lock for my top 10 as individual films. Like I said, I enjoyed a lot. I enjoyed them both when I was in theaters, but it's not like I was carrying a torch for them for the rest of the year. But as a double feature, they were just kind of undeniable. And since last year on this stream, I started things off with a double feature. I thought it was only fitting to continue the tradition.
Oh, that's great. Henry, did you see Polite Society?
I did not.
Okay, so we have homework on that one. And it's one of those ones that I saw. There was a period where the trailer was going on before every movie I was seeing, and every time I saw the trailer, I was like, this either looks really great or horrible. And it seemed like one of those movies like this is either be really fun or not fun at all. Oh, thank you, cool person. I love you too. Okay, I'll throw one out, and I'm gonna go kind of recent with this one. And again, my list, I have a list that like vaguely goes top to bottom, but there's a lot of fluidity. But this one's at the bottom probably because it's the most recent thing I saw, and something that I liked, didn't love, but still think is worth talking about. And that's May December. A movie, of course, I was able to see because it was on Netflix and I could watch it at home. Todd Haynes Films that's riffing off the Mary Kay Letourneau story, starring some pretty good actors. I'm a big Juliette Lewis head, especially any movie where we get Juliette Lewis.
Julianne Moore.
Juliette Moore. Oh my God, dad brain. Yeah. Juliette Lewis.
Juliette Lewis, a fine actor.
Sure.
Yeah.
She's fine, but actually, Juliette Lewis, probably my favorite performance of hers is in the first 5 minutes of Old School. But Julianne Moore, very good actor. Someone who I always like when she like cries and gets upset. Like I could just watch the scene of her in the pharmacy in Magnolia over and over.
Powerhouse.
Oh my God. Yeah. You give this to me. But May December is a movie. Going into it, I was very skeptical. As I was watching it, I was still kind of like, oh, I kind of like this. I kind of don't. I'm not sure. But one of those films, and I think in general, I don't feel like a ton of overlap between the kind of like philosophical frame I use to think about a lot of stuff and the way I think about cinema. However, one big overlap for me is thinking of things via the end or thinking like retroactively.
Sure.
A big thing in a lot of the philosophy I like a lot is like evaluate ideas once we get to the end of a process of thought. The end of the process of thought helps us then reevaluate where we started. And May December for me was a film that landed on such a note that it made me want to rewatch it immediately, and made me feel like it was doing something really, I don't know if tricky is the right word, but something pretty smart. Maybe. Yeah, subversive. And I guess in this conversation, guys, I think we're not going to try to be aggressively like spoilery about anything, but there's definitely going to be some level of that. Like we're going to talk about these movies, but I really appreciated how the end of that movie subverted and undercutted things in such a sharp way, where we have the Natalie Portman character who's studying the Juliette Lewis, Julianne Moore character, and we see the film that she ends up being in, the one that she had done this deep character study, the film that she basically was willing to ruin people's lives and take emotional and sexual advantage of them for, and it is so dumb, so ridiculous, just horrible. And it puts into light the way in which people that make films and all types of entertainment are willing to just exploit and mine the lives of others, acting as if they are doing something creatively interesting when they are just making absolute just crap.
It's not just that. I think we're gonna jump forward on my list now because this was actually my number one of the year. And
wow.
I think that
I'm going to be really honest about something, Raymond. This is a movie that I was hesitant to bring up because in my head, I was like, I bet Raymond hated this and he's going to think I'm dumb that I liked it. So now I feel so much better. I can speak freely.
I think that there is, as a professional screenwriter, not that means anything whatsoever. You hear a lot, and you think a lot about this notion of sticking the landing, of how to end a movie in a way that kind of puts a bow on things and sort of delivers that the conceit in a way. Like you were talking about watching a movie backwards, sort of using that last scene as a Rosetta Stone. But I think Todd Haynes builds it into the film much earlier than that. I think his kind of initial statement of purpose comes with the the very early moment that a lot of people have already been memeing and joking about, where Julianne Moore goes to the refrigerator and there's this dramatic crash zoom in on her face, and the music swells, and all she says is, "I think we need more hot dogs." And from that moment, the movie is relentlessly funny, probably the funniest movie I've seen all year.
Mhm.
But in addition to that, I think that it is so clear in what it's doing, not only through the lens of Natalie Portman and the way that she is kind of approaching this woman as a character, as something to be figured out. And I think what Todd Haynes is getting at throughout the movie is that, like, there is no there. That all of these people who become like tabloid sensations, or who are blown up and turned into, late night chat show fodder, whatever the case may be, all of the nuance and intrigue that we kind of project on them is just that. It's just
Mhm.
projection. And at the end of the day, this woman is not like a complicated protagonist in the, messy history of life or whatever. She's just like a person with a severe mental illness, and she doesn't need to be highlighted and exploited. She needs to be helped.
Yeah.
And that to me is just like, it's this current that runs through the whole movie. One, I think, maybe the funniest bit in the film, because, as you said, it's kind of loosely based on Mary Kay Letourneau, who, if folks don't know, was kind of like a 90s tabloid fixation because she had a relationship with an underage boy. And in December, they are making a movie based on her life, and Natalie Portman is playing the fictional version of her and engaging in what is essentially a character study over the course of the film. And I think the funniest moment in the film is when Natalie Portman, who is the star and kind of producer of the film that is within the film, she's reviewing all these auditions from,
Oh my God, yes.
from literal children who are auditioning to play her boy lover. And rather than acknowledge and internalize the disgust that she feels when she's looking at these literal children auditioning to play her lover, she gets on the phone to her agent and just says, "I think we got to find a hotter kid."
Yes, I died. I screamed at that part.
It just perfectly encapsulates all of the movie's themes that, like, sorry about my my
Dogs
dog
are
is
welcome.
excited. Yeah.
No, and and this is something that we don't need to talk about a lot because everyone has talked about it for a good reason. I had never seen Henry Melton, right? Is the guy's
Charles
name?
Melton.
Charles Melton, sorry. Guys,
Yeah,
I think
he's
what we're
excellent
noticing
in the
is
film.
dad brain, me and names today going poor. But Charles Melton, I've never watched Riverdale before because I'm an adult, but what a performance. And especially from the point that guy
Phenomenal.
gets stoned with his son through the rest of the movie, unreal. And the scene where he confronts his wife about years of repressed traumas, one of the most impacting things I saw on screen all year. And I really liked how that scene I liked how short and concise that scene was, that it didn't dig into that in some way and make it this kind of I don't know, dramatic fulcrum of the story, that we hit it, we move away, we see the aftermath of that. I just think it showed a lot of like confidence from Todd Haynes and how he presented that story.
You're talking about the scene where she's asking him, like, who is in charge?
Yeah.
And I
Who's in
think
charge? Who's
it
the
is
boss?
it is kind of telling that Todd Haynes restages that scene, because there's an actual interview
Yes.
where Mary Kay Letourneau is saying that to her husband. And it's in an
Horribly disturbing
interview. It's
interview.
in front of
Yeah.
cameras and stuff. And I do think that Todd Haynes is it's a telling restaging of that moment, that he is giving these characters at least some privacy and some dignity when this incredibly vulnerable and damaging moment happens to especially Charles Melton. who
Yeah.
I second that. I think he's phenomenal in the movie. It seems like he's gaining a lot of steam for Best Supporting Actor, and
Seriously.
there's no
Sorry,
surprise there.
Mr.
He's
Downey
excellent.
Jr.
I
Um,
still think it'll probably go to Robert Downey Jr. just because the Academy is so invested in the
yeah,
narrative of his kind of rise and fall. Charles Melton and Ryan Gosling are still younger than him. They'll have other
they have time.
opportunities, but it feels like it's probably RDJ's year.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah. And guys, if you're just tuning in, again, this is Wisecrack Live. Michael Burns here with Raymond Creamer. We're talking about our favorite movies of 2023. If you've seen some of these movies, we obviously want to know what you think in the chat. Someone says it keeps cutting out for me when he says Portman, as if we're censoring her last name. Guys, Natalie, she's one of my favorite
Yeah.
actors. When Natalie was in and I think when was in, the Star Wars prequels, that's when she did it for me. So, and is my favorite actor.
Yeah.
But we're talking about movies. If you've seen the movies we're talking about, let us know what you think. If you haven't seen them, maybe this will be interesting because you can be like, oh, I want to watch that. And if there's other movies, feel free to bring them up too. We're going to bounce around a little bit. Going to get Henry in here soon as well. But for now, Raymond, what's another movie that's on your list?
Another movie on my list. This is one that, once again, is probably closer to an honorable mention than a top 10 for me. But I think it's one that I'm pretty sure I've seen you maybe tweet about, is The Holdovers.
Yes.
This is a movie that I wanted
That's
to
on my
bring
list
up
as well.
because I was pretty sure you had seen it. And also, this is a movie that is just I'm not the first person to say this, but it's just kind of it's very cozy, and it's kind of just the right kind of medicine for melancholy at this time of year. And even though it's not my favorite film on this list, it's the one that I could see wanting to rewatch the soonest, just because it is excellently performed all around. Paul Giamatti, Divine Joy Randolph, and I'm not sure what the kid's name is. I think this is his first movie. I should have looked that up.
Yeah. He has a vaguely
but-
Italian-y name. So he's
Oh,
he's
okay.
one of those.
So we
I
should
think.
probably censor that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, great performances. Very very well made, simple, straightforward. Kind of a cozy period piece. It's a little bit of like a Christmas Carol spin. It starts with a Scrooge-like character whose heart kind of thaws out over the course of winter break. And if you haven't seen it, it's one that you can watch with the whole family. So this time of year, that goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like a Christmassy melancholic film. I'm a big sucker for anything based on campus. I love campus novels. I love campus-based films. This movie takes place at a, private in residence boys' high school in the Northeast, a world that I've never been a part of, but that I found interesting. And this is going to sound kind of simple, but I feel like this year there was a couple of movies. There's another one I'll maybe talk about later that just reminded me of what movies felt like 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Sure.
Relatively like simple stories shot in locations that have relatively contained emotional stakes and explore a specific mood or set of relationships. And I think, this is something that Alexander Payne has done before. I was also excited to see the Alexander Payne Giamatti reunion, because Sideways is one of my favorite movies ever. Oh yeah, so I saw in the chat someone brought up Sideways. So it was nice in that way. And yeah, again, it wasn't great. Like I've heard some buzz around Best Picture for that one. That would seem a little bit silly to me, to be honest. But enjoyable movie. Had a lot of great stuff going for it. Really great performances, and especially, and I'm forgetting his name, but it's something Italian-y. But the young Dominic Sessa. There, see,
Easy.
Hey, Dominic. But if I understand this correctly, Dominic Sessa was like a student at the school they shot at who was in like drama club or some shit.
I believe that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah, and does a fantastic job to go from. I mean, yeah, to go from a high school drama club kid to basically the whole movie, you're having to act with Paul Giamatti. Amazing stuff. And I do think as well, the way in which the film, in a very subtle way, uses the political situation of the late 60s, early 70s in America as a backdrop to create a bit of tension and contrast, in particular, in reference to the Vietnam War. There was times in which I felt like maybe it was heavy-handed or forced in, but by the end of the film, I did find that to be an important piece
Mhm.
of context.
Yeah,
So, oh,
absolutely. If you're a fan of this film or you haven't seen it but it sounds interesting, I would also recommend giving a read to Hearts in Atlantis, the Stephen King
mhm.
novella, which is kind of similarly set against the Vietnam War about a group of guys who are all in college, so their enlistment or conscription is deferred, and the threat of Vietnam is hanging over them the entire time. And they know that if they flunk out of
Mm.
college, they're probably going to get
Whew.
drafted. But it doesn't, like, the fact that they're aware of that doesn't keep them from getting addicted to playing hearts in their dorm common room and just like ignoring all of their bookwork and studies and stuff just so they can continue like building this bond around this kind of like mutually destructive addiction to this card game. And I think it's I left the Holdovers thinking about that one a lot just because it's exploring similar themes of how even with this sort of imminent threat hanging over them of the Vietnam War, that both of these movies are about people kind of, or excuse me, this movie as well as that novella are about people who are engaging in something that gives their life texture and meaning and is kind of irrepressible, um, in a way that is expressive of joy and individuality, despite the fact that it may have some downstream effects. And I think there is an interesting tension there. It's very, very human and definitely worth a read.
Amazing. I want to shout out Persephone Sky in the chat that said, I'm headed to the beach, but I wanted to come by to lick the stream and tell you Key West is so gay. Um, yeah, Key West rules. I like to shout out Key West. I spent 3 Christmas times, not in a row, but in a condensed period in Key West, and loved it so much. Some of my favorite trips I've ever done. I think if you're younger and you're close or can afford it and don't maybe have like family you're obligated to, great place to go around the
Yeah.
holidays. Key West. Can't recommend it enough.
All I can say is that as a child of the '90s, I was incredibly relieved to discover that Persephone was saying that as a compliment and not as an
Oh
insult.
yes.
I was, for a second there, Michael, I thought you were getting us all canceled.
No. To be clear, if you're not looking at the chat, surrounded by pride flags, no,
Okay, wonderful. I
that's
just was really, really worried about the
yeah.
audience you may have been cultivating in my absence.
Yes. For those of you who have ages in the chat that maybe start with like a 2, you didn't have to live through this era. But if you were in like middle school in the 90s, and you were a boy around other boys, everyone called everything gay constantly, and it was it was the worst thing you could be. It wasn't fun. We're doing better now as a society. Shouts to Gen Z. I'm gonna jump in now only because this movie I do think it's on my list. It's kind of a wild card pick for me, and I think it has some overlap with the Holdovers in terms of like feeling like a movie used to feel like. And if you would have told me this was going to be on my list earlier in the year, I would have said shut up. But and this actually overlaps with Key West as well, and I can explain why. It's the movie Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, so based on a Judy Blume book, it was a classic for a lot of kids. The reason it's overlaps with Key West, Judy Blume lives in Key West and owns a bookstore there, where she's very adversarial to Florida laws against books. So shouts to Judy Blume. Great movie. Now we first of all, Rachel McAdams, one of my favorite actors, someone who I think has been underutilized, and I don't think we've collectively realized how amazing she is.
Never
Fantastic
not
in this
good.
movie. Yeah. And she's married in this movie. Well, not in the movie. Her husband's played by Benny Safdie. Oh, fun. What fun. And Benny Safdie plays a character that's like a good character for Benny Safdie. I would say his 2 big roles this year would be this and Oppenheimer. I much preferred his character and his performance in Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I saw this movie, a few months before having a kid, and I'll give my personal disclaimer there. It's a movie about a child who's growing up with a sort of, Christian-y goy parent and a Jewish parent, and navigating what it means to grow up, to be from a family with some with different religious traditions, with figuring out your own beliefs and values. I'm the Rachel McAdams in my marriage. My wife is the Benny Safdie. Not non-looks. My wife doesn't look like Benny Safdie. Not that would be wrong if she did,
That's a
but she
shame.
doesn't. Yeah,
Exactly.
if
Quite a hunk.
only. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do have the beauty of Rachel McAdams. But it was just like a shockingly well-made film that took, and obviously this is testament to Judy Blume and her stories. It treated the emotional lives of adolescent kids as rich and complicated and serious. At the same time, it showed and explored the internal lives and emotional relationships of parents with a lot of honesty. It was well made. It was well shot. It looked like how movies used to look. The performances were all great. You get a good Kathy Bates performance. It's just a really nice movie, and it was a movie where as soon as I left, I was like, I cannot wait to watch this with my daughter in however many years. So that's maybe it's a wild card pick, but are you there, God?
No.
It's me, Margaret.
That one's been high on my list because its director, Kelly Freeman Craig, did a movie
Yeah.
in, I think, 2016 called Edge of 17 with Haley Steinfeld and Haley Lou Richardson, which I think is one of the best high school coming of age movies of, probably the past decade. And kind of similar to what you're saying, it has that sort of, comfortable, dramatic veneer of movies from back in the day. The just a simple, straightforward, but very well told kind of high school rom-com.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And guys, again, thank you for being here. It's Wisecrack Live. It's mellow. It's a time of year where a lot of people are doing other stuff. We're having fun today. Like the stream if you're here. It helps us out. You know the deal. Support us if you can. You also know, like I told you about earlier, we didn't have a video upload on Monday because YouTube hates us. That video is going to come out Friday. It's demonetized, so we're losing money on it. But click it or ticket, as the kids say. Henry, jump in with a movie that you wanted to talk about. We'll see if it's on either of our lists, and if not, you get to monologue. What's a movie you like this year?
Something I really liked, although I wouldn't exactly call it the best of the year, was Asteroid City. Wes Anderson's late stage stuff has just really been working for me.
So this is on my list. Is this on your list, Raymond?
Yeah, it's not on my list. It's close though.
Okay,
I enjoy it quite a bit.
Go ahead, Henry. But we can talk about this.
I find it interesting that you mentioned it being close because I found it entertaining, and I like a lot of late era Anderson. I think people get too obsessed with the artifice of it and saying that he's just doing artifice, when I found what Asteroid City was doing was kind of interrogating that more earnestly than like a lot of his critics do. And I enjoyed that aspect.
My God, yes. It was so earnest, and like the way in which, and it did take me a while to unpack it, but the way in which that movie explores the idea of making art and creating things, even when we're not totally sure why we're creating, and even when we can't articulate the emotional impulse behind that drive. And I guess the way in which creativity is a means of working through things. And there's a line that the Adrian Brody character has, and I don't know if either of you guys remember this, but it's something like just keep doing, or just keep it was good. It was a good line. But yeah, I really, really that movie. I thought the performances were great. I love that it was like about 100 minutes long, maybe a little more. This is a old guy take by me, but movies are getting too long. But yeah, and I think that Anderson had a sort of dip in his career, and I do feel like for a while it almost became like cool to not like Wes Anderson. And I'm of an age where when I was in like high school and college, the way you almost signified that you were cool or that you had good taste was being very active about Wes Anderson, active in your love of Wes Anderson. I remember like junior year of high school convincing some friends from the basketball team to see Royal Tenenbaums with me, and afterwards they were like, Burns, what the fuck was that? And no one would ever let me pick movies again.
I can understand that with his early work, because I feel so much of his early work is him like testing aesthetic and technique, but like around Grand Budapest is when he started like cohering into like making statements with ideas that I was like, oh, these are movies now.
Yeah. And again, like I think it was I'm gonna keep saying the thing I've been saying. It was a movie that felt like a movie. I mean, the irony, of course, is it's a movie that was
Movie that felt like a movie.
a movie felt like a movie that also felt like a radio play that was shot on, that was meant to be shot on a sound stage as well, but was done in a really clear way. Umi Mizuno says isn't from this year, but I would love to give Michael time to talk about his love for Babylon. I could talk about Babylon for 9 hours. Guys, if your option is watching any of the movies we talk about today or watching Babylon, just watch Babylon.
Gonna have to
That's my
jump in
hill
and
of-
say, don't do that.
Yeah, no.
It's my
counterpoint is Michael's wrong, and it's not good.
I think like the third time I went to see Babylon in theaters, what should have happened when I checked in is people should have come out and like tied me up and thrown me in a van.
If they
should have
didn't do
been
it
like
to you for licorice pizza, they weren't gonna pull that trigger on Babylon.
It's more thoughtful than people give it credit for, I argue, but you saw it 3 times.
I'm sick of them.
Couldn't quite grasp the all the subtext. In the first,
but
first two
listen,
movies.
I only saw it half as many times as I saw licorice pizza. But no, I agree on Asteroid City. I think some people in the chat like that one as well, and definitely left me feeling optimistic that Wes Anderson still has a lot left in the tank, and that's exciting.
And I think it's interesting that Babylon comes up in the same conversation just by chance there, because it's two different versions of maximalism. I think in a way.
Damn, what a good
that's
connection,
that's not to be reductive to either film, but I do think it is maybe a credit to Wes Anderson how much it feels that he's capable of cramming into that 100 minutes, whereas Damien Chazelle, I feel like Babylon at 3 hours has a whole lot less to say. Now, I want to say Babylon's not without its merits. We did an episode about it over on Cinemathology. You can check it out if you like. I think for me, though, it's a movie that was maybe spread a little bit thin in the story it was interested in telling, when there were much more interesting things happening in the margins of that film.
Yeah. Two things. I was going to say Beatmaster in the chat said the elephant in the room when we started talking about Babylon. So respect to that comment. Also, what a move of cowardice to not have me on the episode where we talked about Babylon.
I didn't know you were a Babylon head. We recorded it. We recorded it basically right after it came out, and then like every episode of my podcast, it was delayed indefinitely.
It's canon in human society that I'm at least in like the top committee of the Babylon Hive.
I'll do a Babylon Redux and have you on.
Yeah, how about in 10 years?
Set the date. In 10 years, when everyone will undoubtedly still be talking about Babylon.
That was literally my take the week after. Was like, guys, in however many years, this is all we're going to be talking about. Okay, we're talking about a movie from 2022 that no one liked except for me. We got to keep it moving. We're in 2023. Raymond, what's a movie on your list?
I'm going to throw out a few movies all at once so we can speed things along here. Not a comment on this conversation, but just, lists are a certain length.
Oh, note taken, guys. We're going to keep it moving now.
Keeping it moving so I can talk about more great movies.
Yes.
2 of these movies I think people have said a lot about already, so I won't dwell on them too much. Oppenheimer and Priscilla. I think these are kind of similar to what we were just discussing. These are 2 really interesting, different ways to approach a biopic, but still really ground themselves in the perspective of their main character, their title character. If you haven't seen Priscilla, I definitely recommend it. Oppenheimer, I have some issues with, but in terms of just like sheer muscular filmmaking, it's kind of an undeniable technical achievement.
Yeah.
And then another movie that's kind of cradled between those 2 on my my best of list is Passages, Ira Sachs' newest film, which stars Franz Rogowski, Ben Whishaw, and Adele Exarchopoulos. This is one that maybe flew under the radar. I think it's available to stream on Mubi now. But this is just a really, really great movie about a love triangle between one woman one gay man and the bisexual man who's kind of his affections are very fickle, and he's fluttering between the two of them based on his emotional needs first, foremost, and as we find out, eventually last, and just kind of a character portrait of someone who sort of feeds off of others in an emotional way. I won't say too much more than that. It's not really a movie you can spoil because it is so much about just genuine human character drama. But I highly recommend it. Like I said, it's one that probably has not gotten as much attention as a Priscilla or an Oppenheimer, but is no less worthy.
Yeah, some stuff to say here. First in the chat, Umi Mizuno did say Michael has advertised Babylon Love so much, I'm surprised Paramount didn't send him a care package. Fun story. I didn't get a care package from Paramount. I got a care package from Sony once for how much I love the show For All Mankind.
Did you?
So yeah, I got a
what was
tweet,
in it?
a really nice water bottle, a sweater, like a good quality For All Mankind sweater, and then a little like booklet with some like stills from the show. And then a random other fact is one of the only famous person who follows my band's Instagram account is someone who's on For All Mankind. Actually, two people from that show, because one of the writers and actors on that show is a huge Deadhead. But I'll stop there. But back to Oppenheimer. So Priscilla is one of those ones that I'm really bummed that I didn't get to see due to life getting in the way. Passages, haven't seen. It's on my list now. Oppenheimer, I'll just say, is one of the two movies. I know that we're going to talk about the other one later. Maybe it should be the last one we talk about. One of two movies this year where I was like, yep, they deserved to have 3 hours. I'm not mad that they kept me in the theater this long. They earned those minutes. And it was, I'm someone who's not a big Nolan because he has good taste in Los Feliz diners. Very inside baseball thing for the Los Angeles contingent here. But yeah, I just thought that was a really thrilling theatrical experience. That might have been one of the most fun might be a weird word, but like it was the second movie I saw after having the kids. Saw Barbie first, Oppenheimer second. And it made me happy that movies existed. It made me happy that we still get to go to theaters and that people can still make things like that. I thought it tried to reckon with some interesting ideas. It landed those with various levels of success, but a really phenomenal movie, and maybe my favorite Nolan movie. I'd have to really think about it, but really enjoyed that. Henry, do you have thoughts on any of these?
I would agree with Oppenheimer maybe being Nolan's best. I felt it took a lot of his kind of like logic fetishes as far as like his structure and like plot twist driven logic stuff goes. And he was like kind of applying it all towards this concept of compartmentalization and like how someone rationalizes cowardice. And I think that makes it like a movie of his that explores something like more like human and fuzzy and warm and interesting than a lot of his other work, which sometimes is a bit too clockwork-like.
And
but
there's go on.
Oh, but I was just gonna say, yeah, both. I haven't seen Passages, but also Oppenheimer and Priscilla, I both appreciated a lot more. I liked them when I first watched them, but to bring up Napoleon again, just by contrast, it made me appreciate what they had going on kind of like a structural, ideological level a lot more.
Yeah,
And I think there's a formal audacity to Oppenheimer that we're going to see be very influential in the coming years. I kind of got the feeling when I was watching it that I used to get when I would watch movies from the Wachowskis, that the two of them were always creating these worlds and creating new visual vocabulary, whether it's The Matrix or something like Speed Racer, which I think is kind of their magnum opus. They're doing stuff that feels like transmissions from the future. And when you would watch something like The Matrix, which had a very obviously long cultural tale, you get the sense that like, oh, I'm seeing what movies are going to pretend to be for the next 5 or 10 years. And I think we'll probably see a lot of folks trying that kind of Oppenheimer parallel narrative. Not that that's entirely revolutionary, but there is something wild about its structure that it almost feels like the movie is structured like synapses being fired.
Yeah, it is.
Go on, Henry.
I was just gonna say it is, yeah, definitely a mature evolution of the Memento prestige type format into again something just a bit more like human and emotion driven. Definitely
Yeah.
more so than like Tenet.
It feels like a purely distilled like mapping of this person's brain, that like every terrible thing that he's done is happening at every single moment. He's contending with it all at every single moment, and it all leads to this sort of like the cathexis of, you know, the atomic test. It's just it's so audacious, and like I said, I have some issues with it, but in terms of just sheer filmmaking, it kind of blew me away.
Yeah. I will say that Beatmaster is currently winning the chat. There's still time for someone else to win the chat, but Beatmaster is currently winning. I'm
But
gonna
you
keep it
will have to
moving.
kill Beatmaster.
Oh yeah, you gotta kill him. Kill him dead. But to transition,
Swatting
another movie.
Beatmaster.
Sorry, Beatmaster. Another movie that's on my list that involves explosions. Seamless transition. My God, you're good. Was How to Blow Up a Pipeline, a movie based
My
on
next pick, baby.
yeah, a movie based on a nonfiction book that we've actually talked about on the channel before. We talked about it on Culture Binge when that still existed. Rest in peace. Talked about it in a video on Rick and Morty and climate terrorism. Rest in peace. Us talking about Rick and Morty as well. But I was so skeptical of the whole idea of this. When I heard about it, I thought it sounded insane and maybe even kind of dumb. Because again, this is based on an academic book that kind of takes the philosophical and social theory approach to climate activism and using means of physical disruption in the sake of climate activism. And my God, was this a great movie? It took everything I love about like an oceans film or a heist movie where we put the team together, we get ready for the job, different obstacles happen along the way, we overcome those things. At the end, things kind of go off, they kind of fall apart. We see people deal with consequences of that thing. Many of the actors in that movie are people I had not seen before, and I thought they were really, really great. And I thought my biggest worry about that movie was that it was somehow going to sanitize the complexity and maybe the uncomfortable politics of the book. And I don't think it did that. I think that it carried a lot of the intellectual force of that book, but showed it in a really personalized and individual way and helped us understand the stakes of like, it's one thing when we read books about politics and big ideas and we think about changing the world and we think about people that are ruining the world. But it's another thing to see how those ideas are internalized, are lived out, and how those things affect individuals from a variety of backgrounds. And I think the movie did a really great job of that. But Raymond, this was one of yours as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was one of the best movies I saw all year. And it is, I think you hit on something interesting there, that like by its nature, the movie is kind of like inherently polemical, but it's not in a way that distracts from the drama. And I think there are a lot of like, you know, quote unquote message movies that end up putting the messaging first and the storytelling kind of follows that, and that often feels inorganic and distracting. But this is a movie that I think is so effective because it shows you who these characters are through their actions rather than relying on exposition or monologue or what have you. You know, there's some good tight dialogue in there, and these characters are interesting people. But it's a movie that understands like character is action, and action is character. And one of the things that I like about it so much as well is that one of the reasons that these people are kind of unified in their goal to sabotage some oil infrastructure is because it's something that they can focus on and that they feel is mutually beneficial, not only to themselves as a group, but society as a whole and the environment as a whole. Because they do have several like political differences. Like they come from different backgrounds, they come from different perspectives and different political convictions. But there's a long history of, you know, conservative environmentalism. People who are concerned about issues of like imminent domain and cattle herders who are upset about their land being polluted and things like that. Like I think one of the things that is so powerful about the film is that it does underscore that like there are a lot of things that are designed by media and politicians to distract us, but in the end, like I would say the vast majority of people do share certain goals. And if you're capable of focusing on those things that cut across class lines, or excuse me, that are unified by class solidarity, that kind of cut across partisan lines, you're able to accomplish a whole hell of a lot. And I agree with you, Michael. It is, in addition to all of that, incredibly thrilling to see these folks pull off what is essentially kind of like a heist in a way.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point that often with idea or message movies, the message or the moralism gets in the way of the story, which then just obscures the message. I think in this one, by making the story so good, it only highlights the message in an even stronger way because it doesn't feel, and it's I can't believe I'm saying this about this movie, but it just doesn't feel like moralistic. It feels human. It feels materialist in a way. Raymond makes this great point about how it talks about how these things, obviously climate change, the fossil fuel industry affect people across class lines. And you see college students and a conservative rancher and someone from an indigenous community and a working class person. Like you see how at bottom, a lot of the biggest political issues of our time are material issues that don't really care as much about some of like the online ideological shit.
Yeah. And all of them came to that same revolutionary politics from different avenues, which I think is, and it doesn't feel inorganic, unlike, what was the movie that just released the trailer, Alex Garland's Civil War movie, where
it's going to be bad.
Texas and California have paired up, and New York and Alaska are going to be fighting the good fight together. And it's like, this feels like someone who's trying to make a political film without commenting at all on the politics, which would undergird this kind of conflagration. Whereas How to Blow Up a Pipeline, it presents these characters in a real and organic way, and it never feels as though their relationship is forced or unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, and in the chat, people seem either excited about this or excited to see if they haven't. So I think highly recommended How to Blow Up a Pipeline. If you want to blow up a pipeline, like the stream and join our Patreon. Let's see. So I think there's one that I'm not going to say it, but I think we all probably know the one we should save for last. Is that? Can I just say that? And we probably know the one.
You mentioned earlier that it runs in excess of 3 hours.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So let's. I have at least two more that I want to bring up. Raymond, what's another one from your list that's not that one?
Right. I've got three more that I want to bring up. I'll pair two of them together because they're both wonderful character portraits. Kelly Reichardt, who's one of my favorite filmmakers, did a movie called Showing Up, which features Michelle Williams and Hong Chow. And
if
this
you say
just
the other movie, I think you're going to say I'm going to lose my mind.
Okay. Let's see what's melding here. And the other one is Davy Chow's Return to Seoul.
That's not what I thought you were going to say, but I'm so
mist.
glad you brought that movie up because that movie fucking ripped.
What was yours?
Movie. Oh no, so I was okay. Showing Up is on mine. I was maybe going to pair next Showing Up in Past Lives.
Okay, I did not like Past Lives.
So Past Lives, and I want to talk about Past Lives with you because it's a movie I liked a lot. But then recently I realized I maybe don't like, but we can talk about it. But Showing Up, and Dennis Vandermeer brings up Banshees of Inisherin. I don't know, Dennis, for in America that was a 2022 film. It might have came out differently in Europe.
Sure. And in fairness, I think both Showing Up and Return to Seoul were played at festivals in 2022, but came out in theaters this year. So it's one of those kind of wiggly things.
Yeah. God, both great movies. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, like I said, I kind of paired them together because I think they have a lot in common. That they're both about very kind of thorny, oftentimes frustrating and knowingly frustrating people who kind of put a lot of distance between themselves and others,
Mhm.
but are ultimately like very soulful people who are just looking for ways to express themselves. And because their forms of expression fall outside of what may be deemed like acceptable socially,
Uh-huh.
they just kind of can't get out of their own way. I think that Michelle Williams in Showing Up has to contend with a lot less of that. She's just kind of like a thorny and somewhat withdrawn person, but ultimately like her art is harmless. Whereas in Return to Seoul, there's like one sequence where you find out she's a fucking arms dealer, and she
Yeah.
has more or less fallen into that career path just because she's someone who is kind of like a um trying to think of how to say this, but she's almost like a glutton for experience. Like she's
Yeah.
just when something comes her way, she just like picks it up and tears into it like an animal. And then when she just gets sick of it, she drops it at a moment's notice, and she can kind of
Yeah.
like change every conviction or every goal in her life to something that she was not on her radar a second ago, but is now the most important thing in the world.
Well, and to even touch back on that idea of films sometimes revealing themselves towards the end, Return to Seoul is one that I loved right off the bat. Um, as the main character starts to get really gnarly, it took me out of it for a bit because I was like, what the fuck is happening? When we're now like an arms dealer that participates in like underground druggy tattoo techno thrash club life or whatever it
Yeah.
was. Um,
And her
but
dad is still desperate for her approval.
yes. But the thing you point out is like by the end, I think we do like get it. That sort of thirst for experience and that recklessness to feel all the stuff and do all the things um really lands. And I think that's another movie where the ending, which is an ending, I don't know, I didn't it's a pretty quiet ending all things considered, but I loved it.
Yeah, and I
Um
think it's a film that kind of has a similarity to Oppenheimer, that these like sometimes really terrible instincts can still come from like deeply human places. And that's not to
yeah.
excuse or justify them, but just to understand that like as I don't think we'll be able to talk about him at all today for any reason, but I remember Martin Scorsese said a long
Yeah,
time
I
ago
love
that
to talk about
like
him.
a lot of the movies that he makes, he feels are valuable, like cultural documents, just because we do need to understand like the interior lives of bad people. Like, because
Yeah.
if you can understand and share a certain degree of humanity with someone, that's the first step to kind of reforming or talking them down off of their worst instincts. But at any rate, I think it's a wonderful picture, Return to Seoul.
Well, and then the showing up comp is interesting because, like we said, if you haven't seen Return to Seoul, this won't spoil it for you. But, it's about someone who like is just like out here, like at certain points, like just like fucking selling weapons, doing drugs, like really getting into it. Um, and showing up is Michelle Williams in Crocs, kind of moping around doing sculptures.
Yeah.
Really wanting the hot water to get turned on in this very small world that's like an arts college in Oregon. And seemingly the stakes of this character's life compared to something like Return to Seoul might seem so low, but it's such a great way to explore like most, I feel like what that movie gets at is like most people who make stuff, most people who are creative, most people whose meaning and purpose is expressed via some sort of act of creativity are not rich and famous artists. They're people that have to work a job, that are trying to create space to do the thing that makes them feel like they are who they are, navigating a world that they might feel like invalidates their identity as, let's say, a creative person. And I think that movie explores it with such humanity and subtlety throughout. It is also worth noting that we're now a couple weeks since Andre 3000's Flute album came out.
So good in it.
Yeah, Andre 3000 is in this movie, working the kiln at the art school, and the soundtrack is just flute music. So for those of us who took the time to watch Showing Up, we got a preview of Andre 3000's flute album. I think it's called New Blue Sun.
And it's a movie that is, it's about all of the, maybe this is something that you can relate to, especially now, Michael, but it's about how all of the sort of like responsibilities of life can get in the way of not just your
Yeah.
relationship with your art, but your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately, despite the fact that these are two very different characters who go in very different directions with their lives, it's a fitting double feature with Return to Seoul, because I think both movies are at their core just about people who are desperately attempting to develop and nurture a relationship with themselves, whether they know it or not.
Yeah. In the chat, Eddie Villanueva says represent. He's our art school professor. So I'm sure, Eddie, if you saw that movie, you
Hell
probably
yeah.
liked it. This is a good comment for you, Raymond. Our buddy John Halloran says, "Hey, remember when Ryan watched 2001 at 1.5 speed on an iPad, and everyone on Show Me the Meaning gave him so much shit for it?"
I do remember that. I remember it specifically because we could not move on for like 2 or 3 minutes.
It's like the most
And I
insane
think
thing.
I think I also dropped a couple bombs on him in later episodes where I was like, yeah, it's no watched on an iPad at 1.5 speed or whatever, but
That is amazing.
hey, I
It's
know,
like, yeah.
like we were just saying about showing up. We've all got responsibilities. We've all got lives to live. Sometimes there's just not enough time for art.
Yeah.
And if you ask my sister, she would agree with Ryan. She described 2001: A Space Odyssey as a 3-hour long screensaver. It's her least favorite movie ever made.
Oh man. I like that movie.
To be clear, I love 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
I do not agree with my sister, but
one of the best times I had in 2022 was seeing 2001 for the first time I ever saw it on a big screen in a theater, and it was a really stunning experience. But the one annoying thing at Alamo Drafthouse is they don't have the 1.5 button. They'll let you order nachos, but not speed up the movie. So I have 2 more things.
I got 2
on
more
my list before the main one. I'm going to throw one out right now. Maybe we all might want to talk about this. This was a late addition for me, and this was me being honest with myself. I didn't want to put this on my list. It makes me feel, not refined or whatever. But if I think about, and I guess when I think about movies, for me, there's always an experiential element, and I try to ask myself, like, what did it feel like in the theater? What did I feel like when I left? And if I really had to be honest with myself about my most thrilling experiences in a theater in 2023, one of those experiences was the Across the Spiderverse, and especially the first 15 minutes of that movie. I found it thrilling. I felt like I was on psychedelics, and I wasn't on psychedelics. And I think in a world where the superhero genre, I mean, 2023, and we're not going to get into this because it's not, we all know this. This is the year that the MCU collapsed. It's the year that the superhero genre in many ways feels like it is falling apart.
The wheels are kind of falling off the wagon.
Yeah, and for some reasons they're very serious and bad. The MCU fell apart even more this week because their future main actor has now been relieved of his duties for being convicted of bad stuff. But Spider-Verse was a movie, an animated film that's absolutely gorgeous, that's in that genre of superhero, of comic book based films, that I just found really affecting, really entertaining, visually stunning, and a movie that had some stuff to say. And as someone who does like, comic films, that likes the superhero genre, it was a really fun experience. I don't know if 3 years from now I'd sit here and argue that is as interesting of a movie as May December or something, but it was a great film watching experience this year. If either of you have thoughts on that one, feel free.
Henry?
I think my biggest critique really is that I just think the first one's kind of a perfect movie. So
yeah,
it's too marred by just sequelitis stuff for me to I liked it, but it's not even in my top 10 for this year probably.
Yeah, that's fair.
I haven't seen it. I enjoyed the first one, but I didn't get a chance to see it. So
yeah,
I'll have to
I think it's
cross that.
on streaming now. I'm gonna take the ball for this one really quick then, and then I want to hear the rest of Raymond's list. I do have Past Lives on my list. Here's my journey with Past Lives. Movie I loved when I saw it. Why did I love it? I felt like it was a movie that dealt very honestly with issues of navigating one's personal identity, that dealt really honestly with the messiness of adult life, both professionally and personally. I think the ending of the film was great because it didn't end how it should end. Obviously, in the Hollywood version of this movie, I guess this is spoilery, guys, but it's not going to ruin the movie for you. You know, there's no Infinity Stones in this one, so you're fine. But at the end of the movie, a character that's torn between two people, it doesn't just pick one and it's happily ever after. It's a messy and complicated ending, and it's a movie that explores the way in which, as we get older, life isn't always as simple as being just one thing, loving just one person, following just one passion. And I thought it was great to see that represented on screen, and I thought the ambiguity of it was great. However, a film critic I like a lot. I might say her last name wrong because I've never heard it said out loud. Beatrice Loayza, Loayza, writes for the New York Times and a bunch of other places. Wrote something about this movie that affected me. That was basically that the main character. Why am I forgetting everyone's names today? Who's the actor? Who's
Greta
the main
Lee.
character? Yeah, Greta Lee, who's someone I like a lot.
Wonderful actor.
But was maybe an actor that wasn't the best pick to carry some of the emotional weight, especially in the third act of the movie. And it's one of those things where as soon as I saw Beatrice Loayza write this, I was like, oh, fuck, that's true. Like, it hit me really hard. And I started seeing the film differently. So, and again, that's what a good critic should do. They should always see things differently. So I kept it on my list, but I do have a complicated relationship with it. Did either of y'all have thoughts on that? I know you said that it definitely is not on your list, Raymond.
No, I didn't care for it. It's rare that I go to a movie and I walk out feeling like someone has played an elaborate prank where
Ooh, really?
they feed a completely different movie into the projector than the one that everyone else has seen and is in this case raving about. I thought it was shallow and one-dimensional. I think all three of the main actors are wonderful actors, but they're just completely failed by the script. I think the film uses subtlety as a crutch. I think it's constantly gesturing at depth, but rarely earns any of that. And I agree with you that the ending in a vacuum is effective, but the movie does absolutely nothing to earn it. To me, the movie feels like someone had maybe a good idea for a 20-minute short film and then had to tack 70 minutes onto the front just to justify getting to that.
Yeah.
And
I do want to just note that
yeah.
YouTube has just flagged this stream for murder.
I don't know about that. And this is I won't get into like I just said I think all three actors are wonderful. I won't get into anything that I work in the film industry. I know people who know people. I have heard some things about behind the scenes drama. I probably should not have even said that. But at
sign up
any
for
rate,
Patreon where Raymond spills the tea on the entire industry.
I don't feel bad. Also, it's not a moral failure to dislike a movie.
No, not at all.
I wish all of the creatives well. But
this
it
is
is one
why
of those
you're
things
here.
where. But here's the thing: is that I always feel bad about digging in on a movie like that just because kind of similar to Babylon, which I didn't care for, but I would so much rather see more Babylons and Past Lives get made than any number of, comic books or whatever. So it's
100%.
That's not to say that there aren't good comic book movies. I'm sure the new Spiderverse is great. There's other stuff out there. All that to say, the kind of like big budget sort of excess that studios have been chasing for like the past decade, I think a lot of folks out there have kind of grown tired of that. And I would much rather take another chance on a movie like Past Lives that at least is trying to do something that's a little bit more human, a little bit more complex. Even if it falls short of it, I don't regret spending an hour and a half in the theater watching it. Whereas at a certain point, I kind of had to pull the plug on going to superhero movies because I did start regretting going to those.
Yeah. John Halloran is currently winning the chat. He knows why. My
Someone
character
finally
arc
killed who was the last winner.
B-Master is dead. My character arc of this episode thus far has been feeling very good initially, that I shared some takes with Raymond, because Raymond's one of my favorite people to talk to about movies, one of the smartest people in terms of thinking about movies, coming at it from a perspective of both criticism and someone who creates films themselves. And now my arc is just getting slaughtered by him. Before we get to the last one, what else do you got? Let's run through what else you have on your list and about the big thing.
I have one more before we get to the quote unquote big thing.
Throw it at
but
us.
This movie has a big thing of its own. It's Godzilla Minus One.
You and Henry take over this one. I haven't seen it.
What do you got,
both
man? Let them know.
I think it's the first Godzilla movie to really successfully address the suicidal thematics of the original, which don't make the original bad, but there's a bit of a melancholic, sort of depressing conceit to the original that's always marred the series. And even like the fun ones, like Versus Destroyer tries to play with it. A few of the campier ones still have this mood to them that I think Minus One successfully addresses. Again, the suicide thematics. Also, just in general, it feels like the most American-influenced Japanese movie I've ever seen. It feels very Spielbergian in a lot of ways.
I would agree with you with a lot of what you said so far. I mean, the Ishiro Honda film from '54 is one of my favorite movies ever made. And I see where you're coming from. I think what I appreciated so much about Godzilla Minus One is that it to me kind of takes essentially the same plot, the same premise, the same outline, and uses Godzilla as a metaphor for a nation's collective guilt more so than its collective trauma. Kind of what you're touching on there with the suicidal ideation that animates some of its characters. And I do think it is it's just a really great, almost kind of like a B-side or reinterpretation of that original in a way that feels like its own thing. I think on Letterboxd I compared it to Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds. Funny enough that you bring up Spielberg.
Yeah, there's a lot of that individual, like, kind of like character scale and whimsy going on that you bring up War of the Worlds. Like, it does so much with its scale as far as a creature, like, on the run.
And I love when folks can take a well-established property and still, even after all these years, 70 years later, find something personal within it and find a way to interpret it. And I don't mean to say repackage, because that sounds a bit crass. But yeah, repackage it in a way that feels fresh and unique, despite still being very obviously indebted to the original. And I do agree with you. There is a great sense of kind of cinematic bravura in moments throughout the film, but it also is acutely aware of not just the trauma that this nation has endured, but also the trauma they have inflicted. And I've seen folks who have criticized the film to that end, that it feels revisionist or is like an undue redemption narrative. And I think there's some merit to those criticisms, but I do think the movie actually kind of confronts that in a way that there are several characters who are reckoning with the fact that, like, they have kind of been ensorcelled or they bought into this propaganda. And
yeah, I think those kind of readings misconstrued just the way power in Japanese popular narratives is handled. There's kind of a long-running contrast you can see, like in Cyberpunk, for instance, the way like anime handles responsibility and power and questions of nationalism versus like American cyberpunk, where stuff like power is seen as like ever corrupting and just like must be dismantled.
I'm gonna move it along, not because I don't want to listen to you guys talk about this more, because I'm very sold on this and I want to see next week when I have some time off work. But I want to do two things real quick. One, we're going to talk about The Thing. Before we talk about The Thing, Henry, speed round. Are there any other movies you want to throw out that you loved this year we haven't talked about? I want to make sure
we talk about the big one,
you get your shit off.
Okay, I just had one question because it was on Letterboxd, although it's technically not a movie. Telemarketers on HBO, the three-part
Loved it.
I've heard
documentary
it's great.
series.
Loved it.
I loved it. If it counts as a movie, it's in my top 10 for the year.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, if they made that one big documentary, it'd be another 3-hour film that'd be worth it. Watch it if you haven't. Guys, I'm going to say something personal now. As someone who's 1/4 Italian, Italian issues, Italian American issues, and art made by Italian Americans is very important to me. That's why, obviously, I knew the name Dominic Sessa before.
I was going to
'cause I
say, is this our wind up to apologizing to Dominic?
Um, and guys, Dominic Sessa was not the only. This might shock you. The only Italian American who had some artistic success in Hollywood this year. An 81-year-old little man named Martin Scorsese also made a film. A film I think many of us have been waiting for a few years. Is a movie called Killers of the Flower Moon. It was very long. And let's start with this. How did we all feel when that movie ended? I'll start with you, Henry. You're in the theater. You see that movie. The credits roll. What did you feel?
I just
What
felt
words were coming to
very
mind?
emotionally overwhelmed. That's kind of always a good sign at a movie when I'm not
Yeah.
thinking about it at the end and I'm just like, yes, that was a ride.
Yeah. What did you feel at the end of that film, Raymond? Or think? Because I know you're a thinker as well.
I'm a thinker and a feeler. I was in tears.
Yeah.
The first time I saw it. The film's coda. I don't want to spoil anything. But Scorsese has a cameo, we'll say, in the film, and it moved me. It moved me immensely. Not only for folks who may listen to my podcast, Cinemathology, you may know I have a certain affinity for Martin Scorsese, and it's an event anytime he makes a film, especially now. We don't know how many more pictures we'll get from who I consider to be perhaps the greatest living filmmaker. But also because I think his appearance in the film drives home what has essentially been the project of his entire career. That, as I mentioned before, he's someone who has kind of made his bones making no sh- but the manner in which he confronts that in this film, and his appearance in the film acknowledges that his relationship with that material is in some ways perhaps a little bit worse than complicated, and perhaps he feels complicit in the cultural genocide that has kind of followed on after the sort of physical genocide of Native Americans in this country. And I think to bring this up after something like Godzilla Minus One and Oppenheimer, these are all movies that deal with historic guilt and historic trauma in kind of maximalist ways, and in so doing, they certainly open themselves up to no small amount of criticism. But I think there is an immense wealth of personal, human, and artistic courage from Martin Scorsese to continue making movies that are this confrontational, that are this deep and nuanced and well observed, and also that really not just confront America's original sins, but also, like I said, kind of point the finger not just at himself, but also at the American film industry, which he is essentially a living embodiment of.
Yeah.
And beyond that, Lily Gladstone gives the best performance of the year. Any film of any size. If you've listened to me blather on microphone for the past few years, I'm certain that you have heard me talk about her performance in Certain Women, another Kelly Reichardt film in which she is extraordinary. But anything that she's in even if the movie's not great, she always is. So if you have or have not seen Killers of the Flower Moon, check out any other Lily Gladstone pictures, definitely. But I'll pass the ball. I could. This is a movie I could talk about a lot, but
Yeah.
I know you guys have some thoughts too.
To keep it simple, I think it was a fucking stunning cinematic achievement. I thought that this movie had so much hype around it, so much buildup. Everyone who cares about movies, I've been looking forward to this for years. I was just stunned. I was when the credits rolled at that movie. I'm normally like I run up as soon as the credits start because I have to pee so bad, or I want to get to my car before parking is bad. I just had to sit there for a while, truly taking in what I had just seen. Um, it's probably the longest movie I saw all year, and it doesn't waste a minute of that time. The way in which it, God, and I think especially the way in which Scorsese uses actors that he knows we love and we want to see to expose the horrible things that people have done and the sins of this nation. I thought were so good. Like and I didn't read the book, so I went into this knowing almost nothing.
Sure.
So seeing the journey, especially of Leonardo DiCaprio's character, was just horrifying. And even thinking about that character's journey as a kind of metaphor for the American project in many ways, going into things with such a dumb simplicity and being edged into such evil, and an evil which one can fall into without seeming to resist it too much. I mean, I thought a lot of that was summed up. And again, I don't think this really spoils anything, but the scene towards the end of the film where Lily Gladstone's character asked Leonardo DiCaprio's character, what did you put in my medicine or whatever it might be? And Leonardo DiCaprio has nothing to say. My God. And, to also be really shallow, because that's my thing here. Another movie where an old man wants to let us know he likes good music. In The Irishman, he did that by having Action Bronson pop up. In this film, we had cinematic debuts from both Jason Isbell and Sturgill Simpson.
Jason Isbell's really good, and
Jason Isbell's so fucking good. And I would say there was a point where I was like, is this like stunt casting? Like, is this weird that you're going to put so much weight? As soon as I realized this character was sticking around, so much weight on a character played by Jason Isbell. And there's at least one scene for me of that film where it's, DiCaprio and Isbell, where Jason Isbell holds his own against one of the greatest actors of our generation, of our time. And I think just overall, like, how lucky are we that an 81-year-old with the career that Martin Scorsese has had is making something like this. I think if he never makes another movie again, I hope he gets to make more films. I mean, I feel I agree with everything everyone said. I think the ending of this movie is incredible. It's complicated. I think that a filmmaker is willing to call himself and his project into such stark question is bold, it's brave, it's dangerous. But God, I just feel lucky that we get to have this movie, and we get to have someone who makes movies like this, and we get to have someone who clearly has not stopped the process of self-interrogation about their work and their art. I think it's a thing a lot of creative people maybe stop doing. I think the interview that came out in GQ with Scorsese around when the movie came out was such a good companion piece to the film. I'm really glad that I read that interview before I saw it. But yeah, I'm just stunned by the film. I'm stunned by the work Scorsese is doing, and feel just lucky that we're getting a movie like this.
Yeah, I found Ernest, as far as cinematic cowards go, to be one of the most interesting because he's so much a witness to everything. He's such a third person in the room throughout, and it's that growing realization of, like, he knows what's going on and he's witnessing it, and it kind of wraps into the ultimate, like, finale or penultimate scene with the Scorsese cameo, where it's getting across that, being witness to atrocity is not, it doesn't stop the atrocity. Like, it will continue on. Like, it's a whodunit where the who of who's doing it is very clear from the start, and it's more interested in complicated because it's exploring, care and enforcement on a structural level of how these
Yeah.
things happen.
Well, and I don't want to get us in trouble. We don't do politics here, but I will just say as well, like the movie came out at a time where I couldn't not think of parallels to geopolitical events, to large scale issues around colonization, and I think that made things feel even more impactful
Certainly.
as a viewer.
I think it's a movie that's similar to, well, a few that we've mentioned already. Like I said, Oppenheimer and Godzilla, and even in some ways the tabloid fixation of something like May December. Um, it's a movie that is very clearly wrestling with how much you are willing to give over. I think Christopher Coate, who was one of the Osage language consultants on the film, said this the best. That he said something to the effect of like, how far are you willing to comply with something that is transparently malicious, transparently evil, and in that way kind of up a mirror to anyone who the belly of the imperial beast. There's a line near the very beginning of Killers of the Flower Moon that kind of, similar to the hot dog line in May December, is essentially the thesis being stated at the outset that Robert De Niro is pressing Leonardo DiCaprio on, you like women and blah blah blah, and he asks him in reference to Native American women. He says, "Do you like red?" And DiCaprio's response is, "I like red, I like white, I like blue." And it's one of those things that's so sneaky because coming out of DiCaprio's mouth, it's like, well, this person doesn't understand he's making a comment on American Empire, but certainly Scorsese does. And that is essentially the movie in microcosm that, there are countless examples. History is littered with them, of people who are willing to sacrifice not only their decency and humanity, but the people whom they love at the altar of capital and at the altar of imperialism.
At one point, very early on, before Molly and Ernest, entered the relationship improper, Molly refers to Ernest as safe because she thinks, oh, he's a settler. And they use the word settle. And I was wondering if there's like an explicit like irony in using settle in the like settler colonialism framework.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I think so in some ways, that there is this notion, especially if you read the book, that there is this kind of like, the way that they talk about like Robert De Niro being the way he has kind of like ingratiated himself into Jason Isbell's character is all perspective on it, because like basically every historical account about that person, despite the fact that like after one of his wives is murdered, he marries one of her sisters, which is very like, on its face is very cynical. But the historical record on that guy is that he was like genuinely trying to figure out who had murdered his wife. That like he was a cynical person, but like he did love her, and by some estimations he did love her sister in his second marriage. That there is this multi-pronged assault on these people, their culture, their land, and their entire way of life, and it's seen from so many different perspectives. But ultimately, there is that notion that it's kind of better the devil you know. That some of the, Molly even says at several points, like, he's dumb as a rock, but he's handsome. And that, like, she even says to his face, Coyote wants money. Like, she can see through him from the beginning. But I think there is this really delicate dance between the two of them, that she's like, well, if he likes me for this, but also likes me for me, I can at least contend with the part of him that likes me for me. And I can like him for him in spite of him liking me for these other things, my wealth and my status within this community. And there is a real interesting tension there. I think that like, she isn't dumb, she can see him coming from a mile away. It's just that she cannot fathom the depths of his depravity and the depths of his complicity.
Yeah. I'm gonna wind it down only because we're coming up against time here.
Sure.
Could talk about this for a while. I guess what I want to wrap up with is in reflecting on all these films and knowing too that there's some movies. I mean, I think in the next couple of days I'm going to see of interest. There's a few other things I need to catch up on. I think there's still some great movies that are still coming out. Pretty good year movie wise. Like looking back at this list, thinking about what we've talked about. It's nice to feel good about the quality of films getting made. It's nice that looking down this list, some great people got to make movies this year, and some great filmmakers and writers got to make stuff that felt really original, that felt really singular to their voice. And one can only hope we get more of this next year.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. But more than anything, Raymond, thank you so much. Truly.
Yeah.
Thank you
No
both
one
for
better to
having
talk
me.
about movies with. And then, hopefully, hint, hint, wink, wink, guys. Hopefully, getting to talk about movies with Raymond is something that maybe happens a little bit more in 2024 in
We'll see.
the Wisecrack Extended Universe. But if not, we know that Raymond will be making movies. Do you want to plug or talk about anything that you've been working on?
You know what's so funny is I can't. It's one of those things where I feel, first of all, I feel very self-conscious talking about like being a person in the film industry. There's no shortage of people who want to talk about their movies or whatever. But I actually am at a point in a project right now that I'm kind of like legally not allowed to talk about it.
Ooh, exciting.
We're in sort of the final stages of financing and development, and if everything goes according to plan, nothing's for sure. Most movies don't get made, but I should be shooting this time next month on my next picture. So keep your fingers crossed for me, folks. But hopefully very soon I'll be able to share more details about that project.
Amazing. Well, everyone send just all the positive vibes your way, whether you're spiritual, atheist, materialist. We all believe in vibes, right? So send those Raymond's way. Follow Raymond on X, Twitter, whatever. Are you just still Crematoria on everything?
I'm Crematoria on Twitter and Letterboxd, and you can follow the podcast Cinemathology, even though we're on a bit of a hiatus. We got a good back catalog, some of it featuring the great Michael Burns, if you want to check out his episodes.
Wow. Well, follow that podcast. Even with Austin on it, still follow it.
Yes, in spite of Austin's best efforts, we do turn out an occasionally interesting podcast.
Yeah. And again, hopefully we'll have some more Raymond and Austin on the channel in the coming year. But thank you so much again. So that was our movie segment. And Raymond, I'm going to do a little just like saying goodbye for the year on the stream. You can stick around or you can go now. It's whatever you want to do.
You do you. I'll stick around.
Yeah. So guys, I just wanted to say thank you so much to obviously Raymond for being here today. I want to say thank you so much to Henry, guys, for being here all year, making the stream happen, especially since I took paternity leave and came back. Henry has just done more and more to make sure that the stream happens every week. And a lot of the work Henry does is making sure we have topics and videos. And often we don't even use all of those things because we find stuff to do. And it's just so important and so valuable that Henry makes that happen. And it's so great to have me a part of this team. I'm really excited to keep things going next year. But, huge thanks. And if everyone wants to thank, you don't have to, but we could all thank Henry and Chad as well. Thank you to all of you. It's another year of really feeling like I got to know a lot of you a lot better. I'm seeing green names and non-green names in the chat right now. And there are people who I feel like I know things about you, and I know and I know what you like, and I know your humor, and I've seen so much of your thoughtfulness. So thank you for sharing that with us. You don't have to get on the internet and like be yourself and participate in conversation and engage with us in the way you do. And it really feels like a gift that you do that, especially in a digital space that can sometimes feel antithetical to us being humans and being ourselves. So the fact that you all have helped create that community here really means a ton to us. And it's something that, we're excited to come back to next year. So we're going to take like 2 or 3 weeks off. I think the first stream back will be a Monday stream on January 8th, if I'm getting the date right. I'm taking the first week of January off. I hope that's okay with everyone. Going to do a little relaxing and recharging. And, you know, Chris Maverick is going to miss a bunch next year, but I'm going to change the fucking schedule so we can be here. And I want to have Dr. Professor Chris Maverick, PhD, on next year. So we're going to explore some new times. And again, next year, the plan is to have a Monday morning stream, Wisecrack Live at the normal time. And we are going to finally roll out the patron-only stream next year. Doing that not to be exclusive, but to just give something special to the people that support the channel. But even if you're not a patron, you support us by being here, by engaging. If you're watching this after the fact, please feel free in the comments to drop your favorite movies in the chat. Let us know your thoughts. I always go back and read the comments, so would love to see what you all think. But with all of that said, thank you again. Have a really good holiday. You know, see you on Discord if you're there. If you have any holiday thoughts or stories, you can hit us up at wisecracklive666@gmail.com. And we will see you all in 2024. Have a good one until then.
Thanks
Happy
for joining
holidays,
us, y'all.
folks.
See you next year.